or try out again.
Alright, I hope you guys are doing well. Today's the end of week 9, and on Monday we were doing the Socratic seminar, so we did that. If you weren't here for that, you need to submit an audio recording to the Dropbox folder. I think it's week 8 was our week of prep for the Socratic seminar, and then week 9 was this week, and then when we did it on Monday. So today I want to kind of go over a couple of things regarding your TOK dissertation, the first sort of essay you're going to write for me, and also the exam that kind of goes with that up until the end of spring break. So next week on Wednesday you will have an exam that you do, and I went over that on Monday. So again, check that audio lecture if you weren't here for that to see more detail. I'll give you a little bit more because I'm going to briefly review what we did on Monday with week 9. We did our Socratic seminar, we prepped for it, and I'm going to review again about the unit exam review, which is on 3/20, so it's next week on a Wednesday. So if you need to show up for something that day, for sure, it's not something you just take home, so find a way to work it out that you're here for that time period, or find another time in which you can come in and make that up with me. Whatever period of time you have free, you'll need to use that because it's an exam. So I haven't had any exams yet, but you still need to do that. We talked about the Socratic seminar. We were looking at what articles people were developing or having for us to look at, reviewing about historical revisionism, something to do with an event that has changed over time. Some people took it upon themselves to use a different question, which was fine. A lot of interesting results occurred as a result of that. So there was, for instance, the TOK question about leaders. So that was you guys bringing up sort of the idea of leaders and why movements are often symbolized with leaders or symbolized by leaders, as well as why group dynamics often, and the complexities of movements, historical movements, often require a single person, entity, somebody as a result of that. And that's really a historical theory about how you look at the past. We often look at the past through important people. So that's one aspect of how we look at history. And then I asked you guys to evaluate the article. This is something that we need more practice in, so the idea that you take an article and look at it and critique it, that will be something we do in the future with these Socratic seminars. While you guys, I'm going to talk now about the essay and how that looks into next week. So this is going to be due the 24th, so the end of next week. So it's coming up. It's only a couple of paragraphs, though. It's the same as what you would have in any other type of class, an English class or anything like that. So don't feel overwhelmed by it. I only need a few sources, and I just need about 6 paragraphs worth of stuff. It's also overlapping with your extended essay. So it's a topic that you're doing in your extended essay that I want you to begin thinking about, thinking as if it were like a rough draft of your extended essay. So think about just you beginning the critical thinking required towards your topic. It'll also help you focus your topic in your extended essay topic into an area of research you want to do. And like I said, today what I want to focus on is your topics, give you some ideas about your topics, as well as a potential model or layout for you to think about as you begin writing your papers, your extended essays. There is a methodology, just like arguments, when I gave you that Tolmien model of argument, just with each of your argue it outs that you've done the last couple weeks. There's a model for the way in which we interact with ideas and with other people's contributions to various areas of knowing. You need to have some type of model. So if you haven't had models in the past in terms of how to write these papers or how to go about creating these papers, that's what I'm going to supply to you today to make sure that you know for sure what it is that how it is that you're going about your ideas. And I'm not just doing this for you. I've decided I need to put my money where my mouth is in terms of these essays and what I'm requiring of you. So I am also doing my own extended essay along with you. So I'm going to show you my topics, and I'm going to walk through my process as if I were doing it, because I am doing it, and you will see the end result of that. So I'm also a lifelong learner, so I'm kind of modeling that learning for you guys. I want to constantly be thinking about the world. I'm not an expert in various areas of knowing that we have to study in class, and guess what I have to become before those weeks out? I have to be a scientist. I have to be a historian. My background isn't necessarily in the historiographies of Islam or anything like that, but I have to learn about it in order to describe their models to you guys. And so I have a limit to what I know, and I have to progress. And so that's every year that's going to be a goal of mine, is that I'm progressing along with you guys, showing that and modeling it for you as we go along. So I'm right there with you. When we go into the computer lab today, I'm going to be also on the computer looking up stuff for myself. Okay, so we're all in this together. I'm not just someone who's going to stand back and give you an essay and be like, all right, go ahead and go at it. I'm going to go on email or something. That's not what I'll do. And so, kind of reinforcing, you guys all have extended essay topics, and so I've already also developed an extended essay topic. And you saw that at the beginning or the end of last week. I was talking about these different ideas regarding history from a theory of knowledge perspective. And I chose the idea of clashing cultures, revision over time or change over time, and the idea of borders. How we have identities based upon where we live, who we are, as opposed to those outside of our quote-unquote borders. And I defined border in several different ways. I talked about border in terms of political boundaries, or ethnic boundaries, or religious boundaries. So we talked about, I mentioned the Crusades. I also talked about the revision of the symbol of Alcatraz over time from a federal system to this Native American protest symbol, which is what it had become by the 60s and 70s. So I talked about these ideas of borders and how they interact over time. I also then expanded, as my final conclusion there, the idea of borders being species borders, borders between different hominid species, for instance, or different barriers between what it means to be quote-unquote human. We have scientific definitions of human, but if you were to go back about 100,000 years or 300,000 years, in that range of time, the idea of being human didn't have the same, it was a lot more diversified in terms of the other species that were competing for dominance over the European continent and African continent. You had Neanderthalensis, you had Homo florensis and Floriensis, you have all these Homo habilis, these groups of people that were transitioning around or moving in that direction of supremacy throughout time. So borders to our various species is also an important topic, because there were clashes and thoughts on that type of clash, including whether or not we identify things as human versus not human. What does it mean to be human? And how do we interact with that? So there was a lot of discussion about that as well. So I was answering from question 1 of last week. I discussed some of the different approaches to the idea that history is written from particular perspectives. And so again, this was a historical focus, how different revisions over time have occurred, and that it shows us more about the people who wrote the history than necessarily the event itself, or perhaps it does do that. I focused on 3 areas, discussed the revised symbols, and offered diverse ways of thinking about the similar issues. So I did things like borders and statistics, and I gave you specific picture references to give you a different sense of empathy, or to use a different way of knowing, that is emotion, connected to people who we might otherwise, or the media might portray as in a quote-unquote other. That these humans that are way far away from us, who are having terrible suffering or whatever, we often think, well, it's all part of making me safe. So one of those ethical decisions or whatnot. I've been seeing that as a theme throughout these last couple weeks anyways, the idea of ethical decisions and safety. Drone strikes make me feel safe. I'm glad that someone is getting hurt over there because it makes me feel safe. But then when you see the picture of the person getting hurt or the casualty, does it not change our way of thinking about the topic? So that's something that's been a consistent theme. I also did statistics. I talked about genetic variance and how that's existed over time to change the borders of our species. And then also mentioned pre-modern accounts, things like the Crusades, and whether or not Crusade historiography is reliable. Now, as a result of that, I have created what's called a research question. This is the first thing you probably need to write down so that you are beginning the process of formatting an essay for yourself. Now, you have an extended essay topic, which, by the way, I will give you some notes on. I don't have the full thing done yet, but I want to throw out verbally what I found so far, and then I'm going to give an email when I'm finished with that everyone can look at. You can read about everyone's work. So a research question is different than your research topic. How might that be different, a research question versus a topic? A lot of you have topics that you decide. I'm going to do something about, drilling, or the environment, or yeah. So a research topic is going to be, or is a broad categorical thing. A question is going to give you some meat, some outlined structure to what you're going to write. So implicit in a question is an answer, or at least an argument. So you begin the process of arguing for a perspective. And so just like we've been doing with problems of knowledge, or what I call sometimes TOK questions, problems of knowledge are just questions that give us this variable of answers that you would have to write about from various perspectives, or from your own perspective, using TOK language. So I say, to what extent does the subjective approach of history reveal changing perspectives over time regarding humanity, identity, and border disputes? So that would be the question that I'm using. I designed this question myself. Now, I might even be responding to a question with a question. For instance, the title questions that will be found out on next semester with the TOK, your main TOK external assessment, will require you to have a very broad analyzing of a quote, or something very, very broad. At that point, a research question might also function, so this is something you'll write down as well, a research question might also function to clarify a broad question, not just a topic, but a broad question into an outline. What are the 3 questions that I'm trying to develop? It's sort of like creating tasks for you to write in your essay. So if you have a broad topic, like for instance the TOK question 1, which was analyze the statement, history tells us more about the people writing it than the events themselves, that's a very general topic. And I can bring in all sorts of examples. After I start gathering examples that interest me, I want to start developing a research question, meaning I'm clarifying what aspects of that initial question do I want to go into, because it's, again, a very broad question. The idea of analyzing the actual people as opposed to the events themselves, and it tells us more about them. So that's what I'm deciding to do with this identity, change over time, and borders thing that I'm going to be focusing on. The idea of a subjective approach to history, so I'm understanding that history is created by who? By God? By the universe? By just computers or cameras? Data? No, that's not history. Even though those are all things that might give us knowledge of something to a certain extent, it's humans that create history for other humans, both in the time period and from future people looking to the past and trying to figure out things to present to you, to present to other scholars, etc. So history is a subjective thing. And that then as a result of that, there are changing perspectives, revisions. And we talked about whether or not revisions are positive or negative. They can be both, right? There can be good revisions and bad revisions. And we would want to describe some limits for why perspectives might change. Or if there is a pathway towards understanding the ethics involved with it, or if there are maybe just 2 completely different accounts of the same event and they're both right. Is that possible? Can we be so relative? And then finally, my 3 areas. So you can see now these are going to be my 3 parts of my paper: humanity, identity, and border disputes, and how those all interact. So this might be 3 parts to my paper. These might be within each part. I might have each part be a different example that I then do in these 3 tasks. So there's lots of different outlining options involved with me. And again, I'm saying this is not the original question. The original question was my TOK 1 question that I've been reviewing. But a dissertation question that acts to clarify towards my thesis statement. And then this itself is different than a thesis statement. So real quick, you have a research topic / title question or general question. You have then underneath that a research question or a research or a dissertation question, something that's specific to what your outline is going to be. And then you begin by doing your thesis statement and then your tasks. So you'd want to be like, okay, so here is what I'm going to argue. This is what I think, and these are my points for each of my parts. Right? And you have a paper now that has an outline to that effect. Thesis after a research question with your parts. You'll have 2 parts with 3 paragraphs each. So it's technically half of your extended essay. But it'll be a real rough draft version of it, so I'm not looking for something super refined. I'm looking for your initial thoughts from a few of your initial sources that you've worked with. And I have 5 minutes before we go into the computer lab to work on stuff. So I've already created myself a thesis. I've been working, I've been busy doing things that you will also be doing yourself. So here is my thesis statement. It's kind of a big one. It's a couple of sentences, but it's okay because the limit for this paper is pretty open, so you have a lot of words that you need to fill. I start with an anticipatory sentence. History is the fabric of the past woven together by the styles and capabilities of both contemporaneous and future historiographers. The concept of historical identity as it relates to the border disputes over time often reveal a pragmatic theory. This is a TOK topic, so I'm incorporating TOK elements, pragmatic truth. Oftentimes we, as historians, are deciding, well, what fits the, what seems to work, what seems to make the most sense. Not necessarily in a coherent system, although there are people who, I'm technically arguing for a pragmatic theory, but in general there's a tension between pragmatic truth theory and coherence truth theory. That is something that works in the system versus what seems to just work even though I don't know if it's true or not. Does it make sense or does it not make sense? Doesn't matter because I know it's to be true because it works. So I'm saying these border disputes, meaning anything that has to do with clashes in warfare. Israeli-Palestine, that was one of my examples that I'll be pulling up. That's a big border dispute, is it not? Yeah. And so both sides have a view of history that's very different about their claim to that land. And so each one of them develops a historiography of that land. Well, Israel had it thousands of years before any Palestinian Islamicists came in. Well, the Islamicists, or the Palestinians in that area, this region of people, had it more recently until it was taken away by the Israelis after the British Mandate expires in 1948. And so they both have, one is more recent and one is more ancient, or longer, or whatever that might be. These are truths that are built not based upon coherence necessarily, but on pragmatism. That is, I want this land now. Whatever I can do to make this land work, even if it is in fact historical, I'm putting it in a system now that works. Meaning it makes credence. My history now is making it credible for me to do the things that I'm doing militarily, politically, economically, expansions imperially or colonially. And so all those elements that reveal a pragmatic theory of truth, particularly as it relates to effects of the dispute between borders. When disputes are resolved, so these are statements now of argument. I'm going to have to do what with an argument? What do you always have to do with an argument? You have to defend it. So here I'm saying there's pragmatic truth, and you might say, well, no, I think it's a more coherent system. And so then at that point we'd have to give ourselves some evidences, right? So when disputes are resolved or recede in time, so as things become more ancient and closed up in tiny bows, I don't think we're still debating the Crusades. We might be at some, academic, scholarly level, but we're not really doing that today. We're not really disputing about who's actually supposed to be in the Middle East, us or Neanderthals, right? Because Neanderthals are what? They're not here anymore. So that whole clash is no longer there. It doesn't exist. So when things recede in time, change over time, I think coherence theory of truth seems to be predominant, meaning I can figure things out as they're farther away and I have a bigger picture. I have enough evidence now to kind of put it all together and figure out, okay, well, what works in the system as opposed to what's working for me now? Okay, so it's the difference in time. So here I'm taking a TOK question or TOK topic and crossing it over with the idea of history and with specific examples like border disputes, identity of people, and change over time. And then I'm looking at it as particularly as it relates to the fields of ancient scientific and historical knowing. And so that's me kind of segueing into my evidences, meaning my examples. All right, so those are the examples that I already showed you. Now I'm going to have to work it back into my system here. Now what might happen in your extended essay or in my topic is as you go through the topics or the examples, you might realize I'm really interested in this topic that I'm finding in this article. This article is wonderful, but it doesn't really fit my research question, or it doesn't really fit my thesis statement or what I believe about things. What could you do? You can edit your thesis, yeah, or edit your question. No, I'm actually interested in this. Why not? Why not let your evidences change your opinions? So as you start with an idea, I might start with this idea, and guess what? I might see you next week and go, I did a little more study here. Turns out I'm totally using this word wrong, or I don't think this is actually true anymore from my initial thing. But isn't that not the scientific method itself? I mean, you have a hypothesis, and you see if it works, and then if not, then you change your view. It's part of being skeptic. It's part of being a research-minded person. So at that point, this thesis is pliable. It can change. So just to kind of give you a heads up on that, and the fact that it's okay not to have to fit everything in or drop things off that you're liking if it doesn't fit. So it's about you being interested and you pursuing the things that you are interested in. That's what your extended essay should be. I know you have a lot of other things on your plate. So I'm giving you one less thing by combining our TOK writing with the extended essay. You're welcome. All right. So the TOK dissertation that's due Sunday before spring break, if you have extended reasons why you need to turn it in later, I'm going to be flexible with that. But I do want something to be turned in by Sunday. I want to see your process. It might not be refined, but once again, and I know it's only a week and a half or so, but I still want to see you producing something in your area of interest. You will complete this outline that I've passed out to you. It has these directions on it, on this side here, this outline handout, and then on the back side it has the outline itself. You can write on it, or you can get this off a Dropbox and type it up. I don't really care. Whatever makes your life easier. All I want is that you do this 3-page, it's an abstract, meaning it's an essay, but it's not your full extended essay. So it's just a portion of it that you're kind of working through. Maybe 2 examples as opposed to your full 4. And kind of hammer down what you want to do. Later you can start taking those examples and mixing them and changing the paragraphs around. That's all part of the formulation of a dissertation or extended essay. In college you'll be doing quite a few of these. You might do extended ones in several different classes at once. And you need to be able to be, again, flexible on how you produce these results. And everyone has their own style, so I don't want to kind of lock you into any particular one. I'm just giving you a framework to think in. Loosely reference all 5 chapter topics is my only main guideline. So while you're working, even though this is your extended essay, it's not really TOK, it can be anything you want, I want you to start, because these are how we think about topics in general. So you want to start referencing back to your notes that you've turned in. Go back through those notes that you've taken and reference those couple of areas. Truth, logic, so theories of truth, pragmatic coherence, correspondence. Logic, so the idea of formal and informal fallacies or logical laws, presuppositions. Argument, the idea of limit-setting goals, the purpose of persuasive thinking and writing. Ethics, what's right and wrong based upon my actions. And lastly, history. How do we look at the past, and is not the past all the knowing that we have? All knowing is historical knowing. So you want to talk in those, using that language very overtly. So you need to go back to those notes and figure out and try and finagle if you need to. A simple way to do that, choose 5 different words that seemed cool, that you liked, that you found interesting or you understood, and work those in somewhere. Even if it doesn't work fully yet, I can give you feedback if I see you trying to do it and attempting to do it. And again, this is our first time with it, so we're going to be unrefined right now. You're going to then cite 3 peer-reviewed sources. So all this is in MLA format, so every part of your paper needs to be properly formatted. Last thing that we'll be doing, and then go into the computer lab and actually show you this process. If you weren't here the last time we did that, you're going to get yourself signed in. How many of you guys have an EBSCOhost account that you've signed in that's separate from just the initial login? So this might be a new little batch here. I know you guys have it because you got it, right? The last time we were here. But you'll need to create your own account that saves all of your documents into folders. And this is a really good thing to have. This is a resource that you will see as invaluable into your college years, because you will have to use peer-reviewed. You can't use Wiki. You can't just use random people's facts any longer. You have to go to the sources. So you're going to get this EBSCOhost. You're going to create your account if you haven't already done it. And it's a little folder that says My Custom, and here's all the custom stuff here. I have shared this Theory of Knowledge folder with everybody. So if you don't know how that's working, that's what we're going to do right now, is you're going to try and get that hooked up. You can't get your email here, which is the only problem. So you need to write yourself a note. I need to open up. Did you guys all get that email? You should have gotten that email. Yeah. Saying, you know, TCTOK or Theory of Knowledge wants to share a folder with you or whatever. And so you have a folder that has all these subfolders in it. I'm going to start filling these with all of our weeks. I'm going to start going back through and going, oh, this couldn't fit in week 1, week 2, week 3. So you can use this also to help supplement your notes. Now your thing, this is what you'll write down right now. Your thing is to actually take your own folder for your extended essay. And you're going to write it like this. So, and this is on your paper too, but I want you to just write it down so you have it in your brain. Extended essay last name first name working title. So make sure that you have this working title folder that you then share with me. So you share it with my email address, which you should all have somewhere. So figure out how to do that. And at that point, then I can see what you are creating and producing as far as what you're filling that space with. So you should have your own information. I'm going to be, maybe I'll find something and plug it into yours. Say, I would like you to see this, and so you'll see my sources as well. If you want to keep your own private one, that's fine. Just for, you don't want me messing with stuff, that's fine as well. All right. At this time, what I would like to do is go into the computer lab, let you guys get set up, and then I'll go over real quick some of my thoughts about your extended essay topics. Again, I'm going to email this out to you, but I want to give you feedback as we go along. So I'll probably talk to individuals. I'll do it like that, so it's not just a public thing. I'll talk to you guys individually on this. So let's go and stand up and get to the